So I am Cthulhu, and I'm going to be running what is, in my opinion, the best of the category extensions for Hollow Knight. And I'm going to try to explain sort of what it is that makes this run such a good showcase run for Hollow Knight and for its category extensions, and sort of what's important about this run to the Hollow Knight community. But yeah, let me jump right in here and get started. One thing I'll mention right off the bat is that our timer, we typically time loadless time. I've added an RTA timer at the bottom of the live split layout, so you can see the RTA here, but all the main split comparisons will be against loadless time. That is to create an even playing field across different PCs, which have drastically different load times. But yeah, the run that I'm going to be showcasing today is called All Charm Notches. It is a run that is focused around gathering all of the unique charm notch items, which essentially allow you to equip more customizable upgrades, which are the charms in this game. The charm notches are basically determining how many slots you have to equip all of those extra items. So this run collects 8 of the unique charm notches in the game, and it sounds a bit like a silly category, but actually the way that those charm notches are distributed makes this an extremely interesting run. So this run has been actually kind of at the forefront of the category extensions in their recent development and surge in the past year or so. Especially interesting is that most of these category extensions have been run on the current patch of the game rather than on the patch typically used for some of the mainboard categories like any percent, which is patch 1221. That patch runs pretty poorly on bad computers, so this is given sort of an accessible competitive run for a lot of people that otherwise aren't able to run the game on the downpatch version. Yeah, so there's actually kind of an interesting distribution of these charm notches throughout the game. You'll see throughout this run, we're going to be picking up a lot of charms. Now, the charms are these upgrades that I was talking about. We just picked up our first run, Fury of the Fallen. This charm is a particularly interesting one. It gives us a 75% increase in nail damage, but only when we're at 1 HP. So what that means is it's a very dangerous charm to use when you are fighting any bosses that have a real chance of hitting you. We will use it for one and only one boss in this run, which is the first boss of the game. Actually, with that damage charm, you can kill him before he even gets to use a single attack on you. So it's quite useful. The reason that we're going to be picking up so many charms throughout this run, even ones that we don't use, is that in order to unlock the final charm notch, you need to collect a total of 25 of these charms. Now, there's only 40 of the charms in the game, so 25 represents actually most of the charms in the game, and that's probably one of the big pieces of what makes this run interesting. We have to figure out which 25 of the 40 charms we're going to pick up, and it has been run and rerun and routed and rerouted to the point of pretty solid optimization on exactly which 25 charms we're picking up. The slowest of them we now have time to about 1 minute total of pickup time, and we're pretty certain that all the charms remaining are slower than that. But again, this is probably the category that's gone through the most major reroutes as far as any category extension has come, and that's a big reason why. So that, from a routing perspective, makes this an extremely enticing category. And I, as someone who really likes to route meme categories, definitely enjoy that challenge. The other aspect that makes this fun is where the other charm notches are located. So there's, again, I mentioned 8 unique ones in the game. 4 of them are just available for sale once you get enough charms. So that's up to 25. We can unlock those 4. The other 4 are spread out across the map. Now, one of them is very early on and quite easy. I'll show you that when we come to it. It's from the Shroomal Ogres, which happen quite early in the game before we even get our main movement abilities. The others are hidden behind some interesting skips. So in particular, there's an acid skip that we'll be doing to get to the Fog Canyon Charm Notch. That's a big showcase moment of the run. And the other two are behind the first Colosseum, which is a battle trial that is generally considered a pretty difficult combat trial in this game, and behind the midpoint of the Grimm Troop DLC, which is a lot of people's favorite downloadable content in this game. So you'll notice on my way to the first boss here, we've been taking damage. The main reason for that is to get into Fury of the Fallen. As I mentioned earlier, that's when we get down to 1 HP. We actually have a 75% increase in damage. You'll see here, I'm able to get a kill on False Knight before he's even able to get an attack off. So that's a consistent kill as long as I don't miss 2 of the nail swings in that cycle. You saw on the first cycle I hit all 8 in a row. On the second one I actually missed the first one, but it's okay. You have 1 swing of leniency. And it's a pretty consistent boss. If you are getting close to dead, you've missed your 2 nail swings, and you're worried that he's going to hit you, you can just back off to the corner and wait out the cycle. It still saves a significant amount of time. So that's the first boss down. After this, we will not be using Fury for the rest of the run. Optimally, you would use it for the next boss as well, but that boss is considerably more dangerous to use Fury of the Fallen to. So in this setting, we will not be using it. But yeah, we're about to pick up our first major ability in the run, which is the Vengeful Spirit ability. This is our first major piece of progression, and it is also a very important damage source for us throughout this run. So this entire run, we will be staying on the base nail damage, nail 0. We won't get a single upgrade in terms of our nail damage, which limits us greatly, actually. So throughout this run, we do quite a number of difficult things. Like I mentioned, we do the first Colosseum, which is a late game combat challenge. So doing that without any upgrades to our main damage source means that we need to find other ways of getting that damage in. So that way is going to be through our spells, and we're going to be using spells extensively throughout this run. So the Fireball spell that we just picked up is our first spell, and we will start using it almost immediately. We will get an upgrade to that spell later on, which will be our late game damage source. So yeah, this run actually showcases quite a few interesting things in Hollow Knight. The main things are a few interesting movement skips. Like I mentioned, there's one skip to get to the Fog Canyon Charm Notch. It turns out that you can actually avoid the ability to swim in acid by making creative use of the Crystal Dash and the Mantis Claw abilities, so I will be showcasing that. There are a couple of other major skips that we will be using, one of them being a similar acid skip that happens in Kingdom's Edge, which I'll be talking about more as we get closer. The other part is that you are fighting in Colosseum 1 and fighting Troopmaster Grimm relatively underpowered to when you would normally fight them in other speedruns or in your casual playthrough, and it makes for a very interesting fight on both sections. So you'll see me here. I'm gathering soul to fight this Balder. These can only be killed with fireballs unless you use an extremely difficult skip. We do need 4 fireballs to kill them, so I was making sure I had enough soul to cast as many as possible. So one interesting thing about the Fireball ability that you saw me just use there is it gives you an added boost backwards. So when you shoot a Fireball, it pushes you slightly backwards, and we are going to use this to try to do a number of Fireball skips in the first segment of the game, this green path. Sorry, the second segment, really. It's the second area we've been in. It allows us to do a couple of major sequence breaks. All the Fireball skips, luckily, do have relatively easy backups that are quite resettable. They look a bit easier than they actually are. These Fireball skips are relatively precise. You do need to fire the Fireball shortly after turning around. You just saw me use that one there. That skips a pretty major segment of green path. But you do need to shoot the Fireball very shortly after turning around, and it can be a bit of a stumbling block for beginner players. Luckily, like I mentioned, there are backups to that and all the other Fireball skips here. I'll be able to show off one such backup here. You saw I didn't turn around for that Fireball skip, so we come over here, we can lure this guy down and pogo him up there, and that is the backup. It only loses a few seconds. That room, in fact, you can walk all the way around and lose only a tiny amount of time as well, but it's always nice to have these backups in mind. So we're going to be moving through Green Path like normal for pretty much any main category Hollow Knight speedrun. We are going directly almost to the Hornet boss, but we will be stopping to pick up the Green Path Stag. Stags, we've actually already opened one in this game. It is the Crossroads Stag. We got it very early on. We will be opening up our second here, which is known as the Green Path Stag. They are a form of fast travel that we're going to be using throughout the game to quickly return to areas that we've been in before. You'll see us using it quite extensively as we go on. But for now, we are simply going to purchase this stag, and you'll see it come to use much later when we need to return to this area. Now, once we've bought this stag, we're coming up on the first real boss of the run. I wouldn't count False Knight as a significant hurdle in this run. Even with the Fury of the Fallen strats, that boss is relatively easy and quick to learn. Hornet is the first boss that, for many casual players, can give quite a lot of trouble. This boss optimally is also fought with Fury of the Fallen equipped. As you can see here, we've taken off Fury of the Fallen and we come in with full health instead to ensure that we have a relatively painless fight. Hornet is always a boss that can give some trouble when she's not in the best of moods. You'll see the strat there. It is mostly to hit her with as many fireballs as you can and get your nail swings in to recharge the soul needed for those fireballs. Okay, so that is the end of Green Path, and now we're going to utilize a trick that is actually pretty useful throughout this run and throughout all main runs, which is you see me quit to the main menu here. I actually did this very early on as well, but this is the first major utilization of this. When you quit to the main menu, it actually saves your progress, including any pickups you've received. So you saw we just picked up our first major movement ability, the dash ability, called the Mothwing Cloak. We actually, as soon as we pick that up, can quit back to the menu. That returns us to our last bench location, which was in Ancestral Mound. That lets us get back there much more quickly than if we had to backtrack all the way through Green Path, and it turns out to be a quite useful routing tool that we'll be using quite a lot. So here we're going to come up on our first of the upgrades that are known as the Charm Notches. That is, of course, the focus of what this run is all about. This one is obtained at these Shrimal Ogres here. We just want to kill them. They drop the first of the notches. So I haven't really talked too much about what the notches do, but the notches, again, are essentially upgrade slots. So they allow you to place these charms, which are your upgrades, in those slots according to the number of slots that each charm takes. So, for example, the Fury of the Fallen charm, that first charm that we picked up, which gives us that damage bonus at 1 HP, that takes 2 charm notches to use. There are a lot of charms that take 2 or 1 or 3 or 4. The total number of charm notches we can get is 11, which allows you to equip as many charms as possible. That is the entire point of this run, is to collect all of those upgrade slots so that we can equip as many charms as we can. But really, what the point of this run is cool skips and underpowered boss fights. So, a bit unlike other major Hollow Knight categories, this run actually doesn't immediately go to the Mantis Claw ability. So most runs will come into Fungal Waste to pick up what is probably the most important item in the game, known as the Mantis Claw. Of course, we took a brief detour by the Shrimal Ogres, but we're going to continue on here and actually collect the Dash Master charm. Dash Master is often a charm that's too far out of the way for the Hollow Knight speedruns to pick up. That is not the case in all charm notches, because as I mentioned at the very beginning of this run, we actually need to collect 25 of the 40 charms in this game. Dash Master actually takes a little bit of time to collect, but it does save a bunch of time later on in the run, and the reason for that is we're going to equip it immediately. Dash Master is an ability, or a charm rather, that gives us the ability to dash more quickly. Effectively, we can chain our dashes almost completely. As you can see there, I'm dashing much faster. And that added movement bonus does give us quite a bit of an edge in a few of the early game areas that we'll be going through. So we'll be using it throughout this run. That makes it one of the few categories that doesn't do one of the tricks in the early game, which is the explosion pogo, which you can see showcased in just about every other Hollow Knight run. So it's a very unique run in that sense. It does still do this Mantis pogo, which is a very interesting version with Dashmaster equipped, but you just saw it there. We pogo those Mantises to get up here. But yeah, again, a bit unlike other major Hollow Knight categories, especially ones of this length, we aren't going to be leaving this area with a save and quit. We're going to be continuing through Fungal Wastes roughly as the game developers intended, coming up here to go through the City of Tears. And the reason for that is we need to get Desolate Dive very, very quickly, and this is actually the fastest way to do that. So one thing that's really interesting about this run is the way in which the early game diverges from the staples of Hollow Knight speedrunning in any percent and all skills and mainboard categories like that. Instead, we have this actually very interesting early game that's more akin to a 100% category in a category that's still only about an hour long. So we do get to take advantage of that. And again, many people, when they watch Hollow Knight speedruns for the first time, they think, okay, well, we must pick up the Dashmaster charm because that makes us go so much faster. Well, it's actually so far out of the way that most runs don't get it. This is a run that actually does get to utilize that Dashmaster movement, and I think that makes it quite interesting. We keep this on for a pretty large section of the game, and when we finally get rid of it, it is to make room for Grimm. Okay, so you've seen me enter the City of Tears here. Again, this is essentially the intended route through the game up to this point, with a couple of minor time saves that saved us from going through a couple of longer sections or rooms like in Green Path. But we are generally following the progression laid out to us in the casual experience here. We will continue to do that for just a minute or two here. So we're going to sell to Lem. This is going to be our main geosource in the game. We'll be talking about this a lot later. And then we're going to head up to the Soul Sanctum, one of the most difficult parts of the early parts of this run. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what it is that Soul Sanctum does and what makes it so frustrating for the early game. So the main idea here is we're here to pick up the Desolate Dive ability. Now, dive isn't explicitly required for anything in this run. All the charm notches can be achieved without picking up Desolate Dive, but it is significantly faster to get this because this gives us access to a lot of quick charms, it gives us access to Crystal Peak, and it gives us access to the crypts, which is a pretty important route that we take to get to the other side of the City of Tears later. So we do rush Desolate Dive, and it turns out that is significantly faster than the route options that skip this ability entirely. Whoops. Okay, so we'll head up here. Now, Soul Sanctum is frustrating because these enemies here completely randomly spawn throughout the room. Their only rule is they can't spawn directly into where you're currently standing, which is a nice rule. That is a rule that was not actually present in very early patches of this game, but it doesn't stop them from spawning directly where you're trying to go. And in fact, as pretty much any player that has to come through this area can tell you, that tends to be exactly where they want to spawn. Because of its RNG, it can be a bit of a frustrating section, but as long as you stop and take it slow at parts, it can be relatively safe. And you'll see me taking those opportunities here. If we do get in trouble, to stop and pause and heal. Luckily, we're coming into this room at full HP. Now, this room is a room that is notorious in Hollow Knight speedrunning. colloquially referred to as the Hell Room. It involves quite a lot of these soul twisters, and can cause a lot of problems. We got through there relatively painlessly. Oop, I say perhaps a bit prematurely. So this is what I mean. You stop and you heal, and you will be okay. But yeah, that room can be very problematic. There are 3 of the soul twisters in that room, and they can spawn directly into your path and cause a lot of problems. Okay, so now we move on to what is one of the main bosses in this run, another boss that can give people quite a lot of trouble casually. This boss is known as the Soul Master. I know personally when I played this, it was quite a pain to try to fight this boss. Now, we have very limited damage sources. So as I mentioned early on, we are keeping our nail at only the base level of nail damage, which is the no nail upgrades level. The reason for that is mostly that all of the nail upgrades take quite a while to get, and we choose instead to get our damage through spells. That makes these kinds of fights early on very, very long compared to how they could be with some more damage upgrades and maybe how you're used to them casually. Because we have only the base nail and only the Vengeful Spirit ability, which is a very weak spell, all things considered. We enter here into the second phase of Soul Master. These dives are interesting. There's actually a component of randomness to them as well. Where the Soul Master spawns is at your position plus a completely random component to the left or the right. Almost all of the time, if you jump fully, you're able to hit him with an up slash and then land and hit him with another slash after you land. But sometimes you can get a bit unlucky and he'll be out of range. Luckily there, it went pretty smoothly and we are on to the next section. So our next goal here is going to be just getting out of the City of Tears. Now, when we pick up the Desolate Dive ability, the game actually saves our progress right there. So if I were to try the quit out trick that I used earlier to get from Hornet to the Ancestral Mound, it would not work, actually. It would put me right back where I just started. So that's completely unhelpful. So instead we have to leave the intended way. What that means is we're going to be picking up a stag, because as I mentioned before, stags are a very good way of getting around this game. They are the main fast travel option in Hollow Knight. And we will be picking up the City Storeroom Stag, which is the closest one to our location. Actually, that turns out to be very useful in this run, because we do need to come back here later for both the Fireball upgrade, which we'll be talking about soon, and a Grimm Flame, which is an important part of the Grimm quest. Okay. So most of this movement is made much better with Dash Master. You can see we get a lot of use out of it, which I think is really, really fun in a Hollow Knight run. Everyone wants to be able to dash more quickly, and it's nice to have a run that actually optimally does get the Dash Master ability. That is one of the things that I think makes the All Charm Notch's movement specifically interesting compared to other early game moments in a number of other categories. This room can be a bit bothersome as well, but luckily we do get a bench right after. I haven't talked about benches too much. They are the way of saving progress in this game, and they also give you a full heal. So they're quite useful. We will be taking a bench shortly after we take the stag here, and we'll get a full heal. Now, this stag is what I was just talking about. It gives you the option to quickly travel to somewhere you've been before. This is where we're going right now. We're going to sit down in the Crossroads, which was actually the first area of the game where we bought our first stag very early on. Okay, so we're going to head up now using our new dive ability to get into the Crystal Peak. The Crystal Peak is the place where we're going to find our next main movement ability, as well as a few key items that we're going to use throughout the game. I want to take a minute here while we're heading up into Crystal Peak to talk about what all charm notches, what significance it's had as a category to the development of the speedrunning community in this game. So, as I mentioned at the very start, this is one of the first of the current patch category extensions, which means categories that can be run on the current patch of the game, which for some people is an accessibility requirement, and for others is a preference. But prior to the existence of this category, almost no meme categories were run on current patch. This category was routed by a few members of the community, myself included, who either preferred to or were required to play on current patch. And we decided to play all on the same patch just to keep it competitive, even though this category is technically optimal on an older patch of the game. Since the creation of this category, that has led to an explosion of category extensions in this game, which are run specifically on the current patch. Quite a lot of these have extended back to older patches of the game, but it has been a revolution of sorts in the Hollow Knight category extension boards to see what started as about 3 of us running these categories to become what is now over a dozen of these runners running upwards of 25 different category extensions. So it's been an important category for that reason, and it's one of, again, I think the most interesting to showcase. Now, as we move through Crystal Peak here, you see us coming up on Crystal Heart. This is our next major movement ability. It allows us to cross wide spans. So you saw us dashing earlier. This is an even faster version, sometimes called Super Dash by the game. It's called Crystal Heart in the official release here. But the way that it works is you charge it up and then you zoom quickly across progressively or potentially wide gaps. We will be using this quite a bit, but the main reason that we really need it is for the acquisition of a single Grimmkin that we'll explain later. For now, we are simply moving through this area, using it for speed. Okay, now this next area is a little bit difficult. We'll see if this is going to be on cycle. I don't think that it was, so we'll wait this cycle out. Okay. So in this section, we want to keep our health for a little bit. We're going to have to stay for a while. All we're doing right now is circling back to pick up an extra charm that we picked up much earlier, but you'll see, or sorry, that we passed by much earlier. We couldn't get it before we got this Crystal Dash ability. You'll see in a second here that we have one more thing to do in this area, which is to come back up to where we went by and use our new Crystal Dash ability to open a shortcut that we'll be utilizing in a few minutes here. So we'll focus lightly. One other thing that we do throughout these runs is we pick up quite a lot of these relics here. You'll notice me going out of my way to pick up a few of them. They are going to be our main source of money in this game. As I mentioned early in this run, we pick up 4 of the 8 charm notches by purchasing them, and it costs quite a lot of money. In addition to the charm notches that we buy, we also buy a number of charms to reach that 25 charm threshold that I mentioned earlier. So we do need a ton of money in this game, and relics are where we get almost all of it. So you'll see me picking up almost every convenient relic that is along my path, and we will have a nice long chat with our good friend, the Relic Seeker Lem, quite late into the run. Okay, so you'll see us utilizing, once again, this quit out here to return to the Crossroads bench. This is just a quick way of traveling back here. It's quite convenient. It gives us a full heal as well, so we don't need to worry about the low health that we were on there. And we're going to head now to talk to Salubra for the first time. So Salubra is the shop that has all of the charm notches that we'll be purchasing throughout this run. She is guarded by this boss here, the Grezmother. You can get to Salubra without fighting this boss, but it is a lengthy ordeal that we won't be worrying about for now. So just for a second here, I need to focus as we try to clean that up. Okay, good. We will also be stopping by to save our good friend, the shopkeeper Sly. Sly is only useful for one, or actually that's not true. There's two reasons that we save Sly, but early on we only care about him for one reason, which is access to the elegant key item. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. For now, you see me picking up the Shaman Stone charm and the first of our Salubra charm notches. So far we've picked up 2 of the 8 charm notches that we need in this run, and we'll soon be getting the rest. From here, we're going to continue on to get another major movement ability, or well, not movement ability, but another major skill, which is the Dream Nail. But the charm that we just picked up, the Shaman Stone, that is going to be a very key charm for us. That increases our spell damage from our Fireball by 33%, which is a massive increase considering it is our main damage source throughout the game. So right now our Fireball does 15 damage. Once we equip Shaman Stone, that will go up to 20 damage, and once we get the spell upgrade that we'll see in a little bit, that will go up to 40 damage. All of that compared to the 5 damage we're dealing with our base nail, it is a massive improvement, and the main source of damage for us throughout the run. Okay, so here we're going to pick up the Dream Nail. This Dream Nail is actually really only useful for one thing in the run, which is starting the Grimm Troop quest. This is an important item if you are trying to finish the game. The game is actually locked behind this item in several ways. Mostly you need it to access the Dreamers, which are the main keys to the final boss, essentially. We aren't doing any of that because our run ends when we collect all of the charm notches. We don't have to worry about collecting the Dreamers or finishing the game. We simply get all of the notches. So that's what we're going to be focusing on here. And this Dream Nail instead is going to be useful mostly to start the Grimm quest. So we'll see that in a minute here. On our way, we're going to pick up a couple of charms and a couple of relics as well. So the first of them here is the Dream Shield charm. Again, we're looking for any charms, regardless of whether they're particularly useful to us, just any charms that are along our path because we're working towards that 25 charm goal as we go. Again, at this point, all of the charms that we pick up are quite convenient, even though we have to get more than half of the charms in the game. And we will be trying to get all of those convenient charms as we move through these areas. Okay, so at this point we want to trade our Spell Twister for Shaman Stone, and you'll see the reasons soon. Shaman Stone from this point will stay equipped for the rest of the run. It is a wildly useful ability that only gets more useful the more upgrades we get. Right now we're moving back through Green Path, so this is where we use that Green Path stag that we unlocked much earlier on in the run. We move back through here to come up to Baldur's Shell, which is again a useful charm, and conveniently on our way to lighting the Grimm Lantern. So again, there's only a few things that we need to do in this run. Those things are the Grimm Quest, which is, again, a fan favorite DLC, and I think a very interesting boss, especially with the equipment that we fight him with in this game, or in this run. And the first Colosseum, which is one of the more interesting underpowered challenges that we do face in these categories. So we're going to be focusing those two things. The Grimm Quest in particular takes us all around the map, and it gives us a bit of a tour of some of the early parts of the game, as well as some of the intermediate parts later on. Oops. Unfortunate there. Okay, so just inside this breakable wall here is the Grimm troop. This is pretty hard to find casually in my experience. I did find it, but it turns out that you actually need to use the dream nail on this bug here to light the lantern. That is something that not a lot of people realize, actually, when they come here casually. So this is how you start the Grimm troop DLC. And once again, we're going to be using our nice ability to quit out of the game here to quickly travel back to somewhere that we were before. In this case, that is going to be Green Path. Okay, so as we come back up to Dirtmouth here, we're going to be here basically for one reason, and that is to pick up Grimmchild. So Grimmchild is the key component that is necessary for the Grimm quest to work, and we'll be meeting our good friend Troopmaster Grimm. Before we do that, we do need to talk to Sly and pick up this key. This key is going to give us access to the upgrade to our fireball, which is going to be, again, our main damage source in the game. So Sly, very important there. That is what some of the early geo-routing was important for, is making sure we have enough money to purchase that key. All of the rest of the geo-routing is essentially just for the purchase of charms and charm notches that will all happen at the very end. So we have a nice long section where we're just going to be selling everything that we have to Lem and getting all of our money back for it. Okay, so here is Troopmaster Grimm. We will be seeing him a couple more times throughout the run. Again, a very interesting character and the focus of the first of the major DLCs to the game, which was the Grimm Troop DLC. Before we do anything with that, though, we are going to be heading down to what will be the third of the charm notches of the 8 that we'll be picking up in this run. And this one is a very interesting charm notch. So this charm notch is the Fog Canyon charm notch. It normally requires the Isma's Tear ability to pick up. And you'll see that there's actually a skip that we can do to get this early without having to pick up Isma's Tear. This skip, well, first of all, we're going to do this skip, which is a short and much easier version of this skip, which lets us skip that first acid pool. But secondly, we're going to be coming through here after picking up this relic and doing what is a particularly difficult acid skip. Now, this is definitely not an easy trick. We will see. Okay, good. We got it first try here, but even if you do fail this trick, it's not too bad. It's only about a minute time loss if you die to it, and you do get to retry it about 5 times before a death. So we'll pick up our Fog Canyon charm notch here, and we will quit back out having gotten that skip. So that is making use of some very strange geometry on that wall to skip over that acid pool. It's one of the cooler acid skips in the game, in my opinion, and something that is definitely interesting to try out for yourself. It's certainly not easy, but it's very manageable, as you see there. Okay. So now we are going to be heading down and getting our fireball upgrade. So that is called the Shade Soul, and it is, again, pretty much the key to all of the late parts of the run. We are going to be using this ability as almost all of our damage for the rest of the run. Everything we do with the nail is mostly about gathering soul in order to use more of these spells. I guess I haven't really talked much about the soul system in this game. The way that it works is every time you take or you hit an enemy, it gives you 11 points of soul, which is 1/3 of what you need to cast a spell under normal circumstances. So you can think of it as 3 hits per spell. That, again, is our main focus here. We want to be using our nail to get the 3 hits necessary to cast another spell, and then using our spells for the main damage, as you can see here. And that is only going to become more apparent as we use this upgraded fireball that we're picking up now. So that boss, one of the maybe slightly more interesting ones in this run, but definitely not the focus. So we'll move on here and go ahead and carry on with the Grimm Troop quest. So This quest is a bit of a fetch quest that goes all around the map. There's a few things that happen here. We are going to be unequipping Spell Twister and equipping Grimchild. Optimally, you do actually wear both of those at the same time, which causes you to be overcharmed. We haven't talked about overcharming yet, but overcharming happens when you have too many charms on for the amount of notches that you've picked up. So a bit ironically, in a run that's focused on getting every single charm notch, we spend almost all of the run overcharmed optimally, where we have too many charms on even for the number of charm notches we're picking up, even though we're getting all of them. The main reason that you'd want to keep those on is Spell Twister allows you to get an extra cast of spells for each full soul meter. So instead of getting 3 spells with 9 hits, you get 4 spells with 9 hits, which is very important when considering this mid-game section. We're not going to be doing that because if you do overcharm, you actually take double damage, which is quite dangerous. So we will be staying with the slightly slower version where we only have the 2 casts, or the 3 casts rather than 4. And instead, you'll see we did get lucky and we didn't need our 4th cast anyway. So this is what I mean when I say that using Shade Soul is pretty much going to be the main focus of our damage throughout the run. You saw there, I killed both of those Grimmkin. The only thing I used the nail for was to gather enough soul to kill the Grimmkin. The first one died with a double hit with Shade Soul. The second one died with 2 separate casts. So those are the 2 scenarios that you have. And both of them will die in simple 2 casts of Shade Soul, as opposed to what would be 10 separate nail swings. So it's definitely much faster to use the spells for these guys, and the next set will be even more apparent. Yeah, so you can see here I've taken 2 hits on the way down. This is exactly the reason why you don't want to be overcharmed in this section. That would have put me at 1 health if I was overcharmed, and we certainly don't want to be sitting at 1 health before we start the fight. Okay, but here we are going to be fighting yet another Grimmkin. Essentially, this section is just following the Grimm quest around the map and going to wherever the Grimmkin are. As I mentioned, this is a bit of a fetch quest. You want to follow the map and collect all these Grimm flames. Once you've collected 3, you can return to Troopmaster Grimm and gather... Oh, I might be a bit low. Nope, we're fine. You want to return to Troopmaster Grimm, and it allows you to advance to the next section of the quest. So we're going to see that here. We've just collected 3 flames. We're going to return immediately to Troopmaster Grimm to advance to the next section of the quest. After the 6th flame, you do gain access to the Troopmaster Grimm fight. That is one of the most interesting fights in the game, in my opinion, and one of the most fun fights casually. And with the equipment that we have, it becomes a very interesting fight indeed. That will be the final fight of this run, just before we collect all the charm notches, because that actually gates one of the charm notches that we need. Now, before we do that, we are going to have to collect the next 2 flames. And as I mentioned just a second ago, the next 3 flames. These are scattered throughout the world. Luckily, we can go to all of them pretty quickly. The first one is back in the very beginning area, which is where we are now in King's Pass. You'll see us once again gather soul. The enemies that hold the Grimm Flames now are a bit beefier, but once again, they still die to just 2 casts of Shade Soul, so it is all about getting enough soul to cast those fireballs. The next 2 flames are on our way conveniently to the Colosseum of Fools, and the Colosseum of Fools is again a combat challenge that we're going to be doing quite underpowered in this run, and it is, in my opinion, what makes this category so fun in addition to those acid skips. Oop, I did not mean to press up twice there. 1 second, as I went to the wrong stag. Okay, so here we are in Resting Grounds. We're going to be using Dive again to go through the crypts here. That gives us access to an additional charm, and it is one of the reasons why Dive is so useful in this run. So we come over here to gather Soul Eater. It also allows us to get this Geo chest. And yeah, once we get this charm, we'll continue on and get the rest of the Grimmkin that are required for the rest of the run. Upcoming is another very interesting and particularly difficult acid skip that we will be attempting in this run. It is not required, unlike the Fog Canyon Charm Notch skip, which I showed earlier. This acid skip that's coming up is called the Kingdom's Edge acid skip, and it is probably one of the hardest acid skips that exists. Luckily, you can simply go around in Kingdom's Edge to the tune of 30 to 40 seconds of time loss. It doesn't cost much to attempt the skip, so we will be doing it. But luckily, there are these backup options to avoid it if you do get in a position where the skip is proving too difficult. All right, so as we move down through City of Tears, we will be coming up on that acid skip very shortly. We have one more Grimflame to pick up. It is in Kingdom's Edge just before we would need to do the acid skip. So you'll see that. And we do have to pick up one additional relic while we're here. That should be the last of the Hallownest seals that we need. We take this bench. This bench is a safety bench, but it is very convenient and costs almost no time to pick up. If we do die now to the Kingdom's Edge acid skip, it's only about another 30 seconds of time loss. Not a huge problem in a run of this length. Okay, so here we are entering Kingdom's Edge. Down here, we're going to have the last of the Grimm Flames. You can see us picking it up here. Good, we got a double hit there. We will come up here and attempt the Kingdom's Edge acid skip. Whoops, if I don't fall down here. Okay, that is fine. Just have to climb back up. So again, this acid skip is going to be one of the more difficult acid skips in the game. So we'll give it a few attempts and see what we can do. That's a good start. Okay, excellent. So that's a first try Kingdom's Edge acid skip. Once again, if we do fail that, it's only about 30 to 40 seconds to go around. So it's really not too much of a problem. So now our goal is going to be coming up to the Colosseum of Fools. And as we come through this area, we need to be careful not to take a death. If we do die here, it means we have to go back and do that acid skip once more. But luckily, at full health and full soul coming in, we should be just fine. If you do find yourself low after doing that acid skip, you can attack some of these hoppers. These are quite predictable enemies, very easy to gather soul on, and make sure that you're safe. Okay, so here we're going to pick up another relic. This one can be a bit problematic if the hopper that's guarding it gives you trouble. Luckily, we are going to find ourselves in a scenario very soon where we are going to be sitting on a bench and we don't need to worry about all of these problems. So we open this for later. I'll show you after Colosseum exactly why that was opened. It is one of the most satisfying crystal dashes in the game. And now we're going to head down and pick up the last relic that we need for this run. So we sit at this bench and come up here. And it's at this point that I do want to warn anyone that's using headphones that this can be a bit of a loud sound coming up. So turn your volume down if you do want to. It's a bit shocking. Luckily, it's not as loud as it used to be, but it still can be a bit problematic. Okay, so we pick up this relic and we're going to save quit back out. This is coming up now the one of the more dangerous parts of the run. It is the Colosseum of Fools, which involves a pretty difficult fighting challenge. Now, I'm going to play it safe here. I will not be equipping Soul Eater, but optimally what you'd be doing in this fight is equipping the Soul Eater charm, which again means that you are overcharmed. So you'd be overcharmed for this fight, taking double damage if you do get hit. You only have 5 health, and you'll see as we progress here that this can be a pretty difficult challenge. However, the Soul Eater charm, instead of giving you 11 soul per hit, gives you 19, which makes your nail a very, very efficient soul gathering device. We won't be using it here, which will make this Colosseum a bit slower than we would like, but it will be significantly safer. Okay, so I will be taking a bit of time here to focus and make sure that we don't take... Oop, there. Didn't see you alive there. That we don't take too much damage. We want to be a bit safe here. Because this is the main part that can really cost you a lot of time. Without Soul Eater, you do have to play this a little bit slower, making sure you're stopping to gather soul everywhere you can. Oops. And you can see our favorite enemies here, the Primal Aspids. But you'll see that the strategy throughout these Colosseums are pretty much the same as what I was describing for the rest of the run. It is using our nail to gather as much soul as we can so that we can go ahead and cast as many Shade Souls as we can. Those Shade Souls luckily do one-shot the most serious enemies, like that Primal Aspid there, and can typically one-shot enemies like those boulders as well. Okay. Oh, I missed one of those fireballs. So this is something that can happen when you are very quickly using a nail and a fireball. The enemy can still have the invincibility frames from the nail that you used when you're trying to use the fireball, which can be a bit of an inconvenience. So fun fact about these, they can be juggled and they can be hit back at the enemies for extra damage. Oops. Okay, so that was most of this this Colosseum here. We do have a few more sections coming up, but being at full health, this should be quite simple. Okay. So there's only a few more waves left. You can see how moving through this area with only... you have to be careful for those explosions. Moving through this area with only nail 0 and taking double damage can be quite a scary prospect. Luckily, you do have the safety strat of simply not overcharming, so you only take 1 damage per hit, and you can play it reasonably safe to get through the Colosseum in a short amount of time. So that is the Colosseum of Fools. One of the most fun parts of this run, I think. Doing this underpowered, no nail upgrades, using mostly spells for your damage is very exciting. And this coming up right here is actually the most satisfying part of the run. So you'll notice I charged that Crystal Dash back in the Colosseum, and you can actually carry it through all of these rooms down here to this elevator, which is what we're going to take next. So this is a very, very, very convenient C-Dash. There's actually one more that happens later, and I can't think of another category that has these kinds of crystal dashes going across all these rooms. So it's definitely a fun showcase in that regard as well. There's one more later that we're going to really, really, really enjoy. Okay, so now comes the part of the run where we are going to gather all the money that we need for the rest of the run. That is selling all the relics that we've picked up throughout the run to our good friend Relic Seeker Lem. So Lem is a NPC in this game who we talked to much earlier in the run, but we're going to talk to a lot more now. who collects all of the relics that we've been picking up, and he actually offers a pretty hefty price for them. It's quite convenient. We've picked up just about every relic in our path throughout this run, and we are going to be cashing in on all of those now. So you can see we have 1,515 geo. When we are done with Lem, we should be sitting at a little bit over 7,000 geo. We need all that money to buy the last of the charm notches and the charms that we're going to be using in this run. So we'll head down here. This is a pretty safe split, just moving toward Lem. Nothing really to get in your way. And yeah, this is a great time to take a short break in this run as you talk to Lem as much as you can. And the magic number of relics that you want to be sitting at here are 1 Wanderer's Journal, which we just sold, 5 of these Hallownest seals, which we're in the process of selling, and 4 of the King's Idols, which is what we will sell next. If you see those numbers, you know you've picked up everything that you were supposed to, and you're in good shape for the remainder of the run. So when we finish selling everything to Lem, we'll be sitting at a little bit over 7,000 geo. That's going to be enough to purchase everything we need for the rest of the run, and you'll see us doing quite a lot of that. But luckily, we do have one other particularly interesting fight left, and I think this, in addition to the Colosseum, which you saw earlier, make this run really what it is. All right, so here we go. So we collected our Grimm Flames earlier. The reason for that is so we could unlock the Grimm fight. To do that, we need to put Grimmchild back on, and we're going to be going into the fight with Troopmaster Grimm. Now, this fight is a fight that took me quite a lot of time casually to get down. It's a very interesting fight. He has a lot of interesting movement patterns, and this is a category that really does have to fight him. So I'll be talking a bit about that, but before we do that, we're just going to do a little bit of shopping. So we're going to pick up the Wayward Compass so we can finally see where we're going. We're going to stop by Sly, where he's going to fulfill his second function, which is selling a bunch of charms. Again, this is just to get up to the 25 required charms to purchase the last of the charm notches. Now, you want to be very safe when you're purchasing from Sly not to buy this lantern. If you do that, you'll be in a little bit of trouble as far as getting the last charm notch, but luckily there's no real pressure there. Just make sure you're buying the charms that you intend to buy. Okay, so here we go. We are going to be fighting Troopmaster Grimm. Now, this fight is a fan favorite. It has some of the best music in the game. It is absolutely amazing as a fight, and we get to do it without a single nail upgrade, which is going to be a lot of fun. So again, everything in this fight is going to be about soul management. Now, you'll notice there, that I used a Dream Nail at the beginning of the fight to gather a bit of extra soul. Most of what I'm going to be doing throughout the rest of the fight is trying to time when I'm using my Shade Soul abilities to try to get as much damage in as possible. And what you saw there was a single Shade Soul cast that actually dealt double damage. Now, what is interesting about this fight is that the segments, like what you're seeing now, where Grimm is in the balloons, in the middle of the arena, are completely scripted. They happen at 600 HP, 400 HP, and 200 remaining HP. So we can plan these out to make sure that we have enough soul to hit Grimm in these balloon phases. And this allows us... This allows us to really set up a quick kill on Grimm. So while Grimm is in these balloon phases, you can get double hits with Shade Soul on him, and as you saw there, we set him up to only need a single Shade Soul when we were done. So that was a pretty good Grimm fight. That is what we're looking for in this category, where you really want to manage your soul so that you have enough to go for those double hits in the balloon, and it becomes a very interesting fight. So yeah, definitely one of the most fun fights in the game. A lot of people don't realize that those balloon phases are actually determined and not completely random. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting fight there. Okay, So here we go. Now that we've fought Grimm, we've picked up our 5th of the charm notches. The last 3 are actually all in the same place. They are at Salubra, and that is where we're going to be getting them. But before we do that, we have to do just a little bit more cleanup where we pick up the last of the charms that we need. Luckily, most of these can be found in shops, but there's a couple of exceptions. So the first one is Glowing Womb, which we're going to be picking up. It is a bit of a detour, but it is one of the fastest charms to get in the game. Again, we do need to pick up 25 of the 40 charms, which is most of the charms in the game, so we have quite a lot of game to do. So the fact that we can do almost all of that in under an hour is quite a feat. This arena is pretty consistent with the Shade Soul ability. The trick is you want to spend your time up on the top platform gathering the soul that you need to kill everything on the other platforms. And that is Glowing Womb. We did that pretty smoothly. We will go ahead and quit back out here. So you can see that was one of those charms. It took almost exactly 1 minute to get. That is about as fast as they come. All right, so now we go and get some of the last charms that we need. Lake Eater is another vendor who will be selling us 3 of our remaining charms. You can see on my splits here, I do have the number of charms that we have. So Glowing Womb was our 17th charm. But while I do that, let me just point out this Crystal Dash. It started 2 rooms ago and goes all the way here. This is the only category that gets to utilize this Crystal Dash because almost every other category actually has infected crossroads at this point. And infected crossroads means that enemies will be in your way when you try to use that Crystal Dash. So this category gets to use it, and that is something that's really beautiful. Now, we're going to be picking up the 3 charms that Lake Eater sells. Again, this is why we needed so many relics earlier to get all of this money. There's so many charms that we need to buy. And this is, again, some of the fastest ways to acquire a lot of charms. So we've done that. We are now going to pick up the last of our miscellaneous charms, which is known as Spore Shroom. So Spore Shroom is a charm that is sitting here at the bottom of Fungal Wastes. We were actually here much earlier, but this is the correct time to get this charm as we have our full movement abilities and we are able to move quickly through this. Now, something that's fun is you can move through this room to get around that gate, having to wait for it to open. And that is exactly what we'll be doing here. Okay, so we're going to just be moving through Fungal Wastes. This, again, is a charm that takes just under a minute to get optimally. All the other charms left in the game take slightly longer, as best as we can tell. So this route, as it stands, is the best way to get all 25 charms. But you can see there's so many different options in exactly how to route those 25 charms. Exactly which charms we get are not exactly guaranteed, and it becomes a very intriguing category to route, which is one of the reasons it's gotten so much attention. Now, this category, again, one of the main reasons for the explosion in the popularity of category extensions in Hollow Knight in recent years, and you can see why. This is a combination of a good tech showcase, a good boss showcase with underpowered fights, and a bit of a tour through the game, a collectathon. You get a nice, good solid hour with the game here to really see quite a lot of what it has to offer, actually. And that's what makes it one of my favorite runs. Definitely a run that I would recommend to people looking to get into meme categories, and something that is, yeah, definitely quite enjoyable. All right, so here we go. This last split is probably the most intense. It is where you are watching your timer count down, and you need to mash as hard as you can because all we're doing now is purchasing everything from Salubra. And we're coming up on time right now. So there it is. That is all of the charm notches in the game in 54 minutes and 18 seconds loadless time. Traditionally, we verify this by equipping this set of charms that adds up to exactly 11 notches. And you can see that we've gotten all of the notches in this run. So yeah, definitely a great showcase run. I think one of the best meme categories that we have. And I think it's an absolutely wonderful run to showcase some of what the Hollow Knight community's been up to, especially the category extensions crew. A run that maybe doesn't sound like the most intriguing, where you collect just all of the charm notches in the game, turns out to be actually a great showcase for both skips and movement tech and boss fights, and all packaged in a little bit over an hour RTA.